So welcome to topic 2. We are now looking at probability. Now probability is something we covered last year, and it means the extent to which something is likely to happen. We can have a scale of probability for things happening. So if it is impossible, we say that it has a 0 probability, a 0% chance of happening. If it is even probability, so it's got a 50% chance of happening, a 50% chance of not happening, then it has a probability of 50%, or a half, or 0.5. If something is certain to happen, then it will have a probability of 1 or 100%. So some key knowledge that you need to recap on before studying this is how to convert between fractions, decimals, and percentages, because that is something you will have to do for every answer with probability. You also need to recap the formula for probability. So the probability of an event, and this word event won't be in your formula will say the event that is happening. So it might be rolling a dice, it might be flipping a coin, it might be picking something out of a bag, and you're going to put that in here. Then this hashtag here means the number of. So the number of favourable outcomes over the number of possible outcomes. So let's do a quick example with rolling a dice. So let's say that we want to roll a 6-sided dice and we want to score a 3. That is your favourable outcome. So for scoring a 3, we would say the P of rolling a 3, all right, is equal to the number of favourable outcomes. Well, we know there is only one 3 on a normal fair 6-sided dice. So our number of favourable outcomes is just 1. We're on a 6-sided dice, there are 5 other numbers on the dice, so our number at the bottom here, the total possible outcomes, is 6. We don't need to simplify that fraction anymore, but you can do this on a calculator or mentally, where you have your most simple fraction, your simplified fraction here. We can turn that into a decimal. All right, that small dot there means that that decimal is recurring. So we've got 0.16 recurring, and then we can turn it into a percentage. So if you want to turn a fraction into a decimal, you can do that on your calculator. You do 1 divided by 6. If we want to turn a decimal into percentage, we times that by 100. And there you can convert between all of your 3 different answers. This is a revision of what we did last year. We're going to take that into something more complicated now and start using some language around probability to describe the kind of outcomes we want from an event. So the 3 words that we're going to be using are and, not, and or. And we're going to do an example of each one of those now. So let's say we'll stick with the dice, and we want our event to have an odd number. All right, so we'll do an odd number that is less than 4. So we want an odd number that is less than 4. We write odd and less than 4. So we want it to be odd and less than 4. Let's put this in a table to make it a little bit clearer. So we'll put event, and we'll put favourable outcome. All right, so if we want our dice roll to be odd and less than 4, we need to count up the possible favourable outcomes that we could have. So odd numbers we know are 1, 3, and 5, but we need to make sure that our answer is less than 4. So our options now are just 1 and 3. So that gives us 2 possible favourable outcomes. All right, let's try now the word or. So why don't we go even? So we want the result of the roll of the die to be even or less than 4. So we know that our even numbers are 2, 4, and 6. And because we've got an or now rather than an and, we're adding extra possibilities rather than taking them away. Here we have to satisfy 2 conditions. The number has to be odd and it has to be less than 4. Whereas here we have 2 separate sets of conditions that we can satisfy. We've got any even number, so we've got 2, 4, and 6, which are on our normal 6-sided dice, and anything less than 4, which we can also add 1 and 3. So we now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 possibilities. So 5 favourable outcomes that we can put on top of our equation there. Lastly then, we'll use the word not. So let's go back to an odd number that is not less than 4. So our odd numbers again are 1, 3 and 5, but only one of those is above 4. So it cannot be below 4, but it must be odd. So therefore all we have is the 5. So that means our favourable outcome is a 1. We can only have one favourable outcome. Once you've done this table of values, we can then work out the probability of these events happening. So let's take this middle one here. Actually, let's take this first one. Odd and less than 4. So we write out our equation. P, odd and less than 4. So this is where I said we're substituting in your event for what's actually happening in your example. So we are odd and less than 4. And that is equal to our number of favourable outcomes, 2, over our total possible outcomes, which is 6, because we still have that 6-sided dice. So working that out then, we know that that can simplify down to 1 over 3. So you can leave that as a fraction unless the question tells you to put your answer as a percentage or a decimal. As a percentage, we have 33.3%. You can see I've got my dot there for the recurring symbol and our percentage sign, or we can have it as 0.3 recurring as a decimal.